You are listening to the USDN on the DSPN.
It's a trap!
What is up, everybody, and welcome to the United States Department of Nerds, where we are for the people, by the people, and of the people. Some monsters hide in the shadows. Others hide in plain sight. But behind every closed door, every quiet neighborhood, and every ordinary life, there may be secrets waiting to be uncovered, secrets buried in the dark, and secrets that refuse to stay buried. What if the people next door spent their nights hunting demons? Tonight, we're joined by writer Michael Barron and artist Jack Van Thomme.
Van Thomme, very close, though. Better than
most. We'll get there. The creative team behind The Secret Lives of Demon Hunters, a supernatural horror comic that asks a simple question. As their Kickstarter campaign prepares to launch, we'll pull back the curtain on the creation of this dark new world, the characters who inhabit it, and the journey of bringing an independent horror comic from imagination to reality. So grab a flashlight, lock your doors, and keep an eye on the shadows. Ladies and gentlemen, the Council of Nerds is now in session. Michael, Jack, welcome to the Council, friends.
Thanks, buddy. Good to meet you.
All right, let's dive in. So I know... can't remember how long y'all have been on the list to be on the show, but I know it's been probably a couple of months now. So welcome, man. It's been a while. I'm happy to have y'all here and to talk about this book, which was phenomenal, by the way.
Thank you.
So I appreciate you sending that over to me and allowing me to read it. People are in for something really fun with this one. And it's cool because I don't get to do a lot of slice of life comics, so to speak. So it was something new and different for me to get to read. So let's dive into it. So we'll start with Michael. For those discovering this project for the very first time, what are they getting themselves into? And also tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us a quick introduction and tell us about the book.
Well, I'm Michael Barron, and I'm, of course, the writer of The Secret Lives of Demon Hunters. And I mean, that slice of life, I mean, I've been kind of calling it slice of life horror, where, I mean, like, don't get me wrong, this isn't a completely grounded story. There are definitely demons in here, demon hunters in here. There's even a cameo of a family of vampires, spoiler alert. But yeah, there's also a lot
We love spoilers.
There is a lot of focus on also somewhat on relationships, and basically the heart of the story is this married couple who happen to go out at night and hunt demons together.
Jack, I'll kick it over to you. Let people know who you are and kind of like, how did this project kind of land in your lap? Michael's already given me a little background on the art of this book before you took it over, but let us know about you and like what it was like when you took over.
Yeah, of course. So I've been doing indie comics, anthologies, one shots or limited series here and there for a while. Long time passion for art. There's a bunch of paintings that I've done on the wall. There are a bunch more strewn about my office floor right now. But Michael reached out maybe a year and a half ago, longer than that, for a shorter project that he was working on, a really cool story called Patch's Rebellion that is well worth checking out. And Michael can point you in the right direction for that. But a cool story that was kind of nicely paced over the course of 5 or 6 pages, and had a lot of opportunity to kind of draw the way I want to. And that's a huge thing as an artist, is being able to kind of like show your work in the way that you want it shown, and have that kind of freedom to not have to draw in a specific way. And so, he had been kind enough to work with me on that first project, and then reached out, after that was done, and he said, "Hey, I've got this other project, and, I want the art to be done, done the right way." And so, we chatted about what the project was. He sent over the script, and it was awesome. I mean, slice of life horror is great, but it was also very compelling. Some quiet moments, which I think a lot of writers, very frankly, struggle with. And so that was nice. And as an artist, we struggle way more with it. So that was a good challenge, kept me engaged with it. And so I had been working on it for a while, had some very serious technical issues, like a broken iPad kind of thing, irrecoverable data kind of thing, had to draw the book again kind of a thing. We're like really rough stuff. And the collaboration with Mike throughout the whole process has been awesome. So, I got involved because Michael was bold enough to make the wrong choice once, picking me to work on Patch's Rebellion, and silly enough to make that again. So you'll see those flaws come through in the work too when you take a look at the book.
It's wild that you mentioned that, because I really love those quiet panels where there's no words. It's just the art really letting you know the story. And but I can totally get where you're coming from with that, Jack. And it's just being like, I now have to make this art really lay into this story. So, and this is going to be over to Michael for this one, since you did write this book. Where did this original idea come from for this story?
Well, originally I was going to do it as just kind of a short piece, like a little 5-page thing. So like Patch's Rebellion. I kind of, got the idea for this couple who hunted demons together. And to be honest, it was kind of based off, my wife and I run marathons together. And so I like the idea of telling a story about this married couple who are going through something that's both emotionally and physically, somewhat dangerous and intense and everything. And I showed it to some beta readers, and basically the feedback I got was, you need to expand on this. Like they just wanted to know more about this married couple and like the world that they lived in. And so it just kind of grew, and it grew into this full-length one-shot.
No, I like that. And you're the second marathon runner that's been on in this month. So somebody is telling me that I need to start doing this again.
Third. I run my age and miles. Yeah, I run my age and miles on my birthday every year. So it's fine. It's cool.
I hope you'll be 102. You probably will be.
Yeah.
Man, y'all. Oof. And y'all are doing this on your own free will. Nobody's chasing you, making threats. Are y'all safe at home? I mean,
my wife's kind of making me, like pseudo making me.
No, I need to get back into it.
It clears your head, man.
I've let myself go, and I need to get back into doing something. So
it's fun. Like, honestly, if I were just like running 3 or 4 miles or whatever, I wouldn't be as into it. But like the whole like pushing yourself as far as you can go, that's honestly when I started to really enjoy it. I know that sounds kind of weird. That's when I kind of enjoyed it more, once I kind of increased that.
Yeah. And I have no respect for that approach, so don't worry about it. I don't want to know my limits. I'm fine. I'm complacent. Let me just stay status quo, just chug out boring junk miles every day. It's great.
Yeah. Well, do you ever just like start running and you realize like, oh shit, maybe I should turn around now, and you're like, I got no idea where I am. Let me just Uber it home.
No, I run a very typical suburban route, and it's like, I have a friend. Okay. He's like he lives in the Pacific Northwest and does like these 50-mile sojourns that are incredible, like the scenic beauty of all nature. And there's always a different route every single day. I live in the suburbs outside of Minneapolis, and I run straight one way, turn left, turn right, turn left, and then do the same thing back. And he'll text me and he's like, "Are you good? This is awful." And it's like, "Oh, it's great. I got to listen to a full podcast." It's like, you know, it's awesome. So and nothing more head clearing than there is nothing to look at right now aside from the same 10 houses. None of them have garage sales. All the people are boring. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. No, I had a buddy of mine that did extreme marathons, like he did the Pacific Coast Highway Marathon from like Washington to like Baja, California, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I'll pass. I'll hard pass on that one.
Yeah, that one sounds awful.
I'll run to the store in my car. How about that?
There you go. Yeah.
My wife and I we have done like our training on the NCR trail that goes up to the Pennsylvania border, and that is just like kind of 20 miles, and it goes on even further into Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
And so we definitely have like just been running through the woods, and it's like we're going a total of 16, 18, however many miles. And then, of course, it starts to rain or thunderstorm or whatever.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and we have to kind of figure our way back. But
at least you ain't got to worry about gators and stuff up there. It's too cold.
I have seen gators running a marathon, though.
I've ran them in Florida.
Not around here.
I've ran them in Florida where, like, I played golf in Florida where you would just play around the gator into the hole. So, yeah, that was always a good time.
And people live there on purpose. It's crazy. Anyway.
Wild, right?
Yeah.
Hurricanes, tornadoes, water spouts, alligators, American crocodiles, rattlesnakes, you name it. And
tourists. It's great.
Tourists. Yeah. I lived there 7 years and loved it. So
that's enough.
But so where did the original idea kind of come from this, Michael?
Well, I mean, it really was just sort of like a you know, I had been working on patches and other things that were just sort of the paranormal stuff. For those of you, obviously, probably most of you who don't know, Patches Rebellion, it was the 5-page comic that Jack wrote.
Is it on your website?
I do have references to it on my website. Yes,
that's down in the description.
Yeah, it is in the Blood Coven Moon Magic anthology that recently came out. So I don't have it like for free on my website yet. But it was like kind of told from the point of view of a teddy bear that rebels against its evil 4-year-old owner. It's sort of like, as much as I love Pixar, it was sort of anti-Toy Story.
I like it.
To lead the other toys in rebellion against them.
Yeah.
So it was this fun little horror story. And then I was kind of like, and I'd done some other things with other writing. There was, they do tend to be told from the point of view of like the creatures, the stuff I write. But I was like, okay, well, what about the people who are acting in response to the creatures?
Very Grindel of you.
Mm-hmm. And so so that, and then combination with, you know, just kind of wanting to do something about our married couple. That's kind of where I came up with our demon hunters here.
I like it. And I'll kick this one over to you, Jack. What was like one of the first things like that had you excited about this project, other than to get, you know, to do your own style of artwork on this?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest moments when any artist is looking at a book is when they really start to feel like they get the story. Like there are, you know, I think people see a script and they break it down into what are the big action scenes, what are sort of like the tent pole pages. And the vast majority of my practice as a comics artist is through the Comic Jam, which is a really great learning organization. Like it's a group of people that are all very like-minded, super friendly, welcoming. And their goal is pretty simple. Artist makes a single page a week with a writer who writes a single page a week, that kind of thing. And you join in when you have time, when you have flexibility and that sort of thing. And what it really trained me to do is think about making comics in a way that's like each page has to be kind of self-contained and tell its own story and feel complete. Otherwise, like, I don't know, comics is not very fast if you're an artist. It takes time. And because of that, if you are kind of grinding away for hours on a single page that is nothing, it's not part of the story, it doesn't matter, you know, like that can be really frustrating. And so you know, I think about that alongside, you know, Kurt Vonnegut is a, you know, all-time great of mine in terms of writing, like a phenomenal writer. And he talks about the importance of every sentence having a purpose, you know, telling something new about a character, projecting something new. Every character has to want something, you know, all of these things are very simple and fundamental. And so I found a number of pages throughout the story that have that. And there's a scene that happens in the barn where, you know, you see this kind of transitional moment, which I will not spoil more of, but there's this transitional moment with one of the characters. And there are some really big, broad strokes that you can take in horror to show the monster. And I never like, sure, you can do the CGI, you can do like, there's a temptation to kind of prove your work as an artist and show this really gruesome, awful thing. And I think it's actually more interesting sometimes to let it be simple and to let what's happening be something that's like, oh no, I recognize that still looks real. And so there are a couple scenes throughout there when I was getting to those points in the script, I was like, this is great. And it's going to feel fun to draw and it's going to feel explosive to draw. And then to think about that with the rest of the book was like, all right, there's a lot of different moments where I could find throughout there where I was like, I can tell the individual page of this or the individual story of this page pretty concisely. And long way of saying, I don't know, it was all interesting. It was all fun. But that there are certain points throughout the story where you'll be able to tell on the page that it's like, no, this got me especially engaged with that kind of contained story.
No, I do. So I love horror. Like, that's one of my favorite comic book types. Everybody wants to have their own little monster. And sometimes it's just scarier where you just never see it. You know it's there. You know it's murdering people. You know it's killing people, eating people, whatever it may be. But you just never see it. You see the aftermath of the monster. And then it can go on for several issues just where you never see it until it's either caught, killed, or what have you. And then you have this big grand reveal. And I just think those are like really fun. Sometimes when the monster wins and he gets away and you just never see him. Yeah.
Yeah. And you see that in some of the pages too. Like there's, I'm picturing them in my head. So if you see me looking off to the side, I'm pulling those pages up in my head. There are spots where like, you know, in the grand tradition of all of art history, the details fade as they get into the distance. The details fade and our minds fill in those gaps. And really good horror lies in that filling in the gaps. And so there's a lot of things in Mike's writing too that kind of fit that bill too. Like there are things that go unsaid by the characters and there's not dialogue for them. It's quiet moments or it's moments where certain words were chosen but not other ones. And what our brains fill in, that is how we start to engage, right? When our brains start to say, what is really happening on this page? That's when we start to exit that point of like, we're a reader and instead we're a participant. We're learning about the story. We're learning about how to engage with a narrative. And I find that really appealing. And I try to capture that in some of my art. It also very conveniently allows you to, you know, take a break. You don't have to draw every single detail because we know that if you see a foot, there's shoelaces on it, right? I'm not Rob Liefeld. I'm not going to skip beat, but I'm not going to draw every little knot on there. No offense. Don't send this to him. He'll probably beat me up. He's way stronger than me.
Dude, that was fucking classic. Pardon my language, but I love it.
No, go for it. I'm personally, I have respect for all great comics artists and stuff like that. I love watching that back and forth where you're like, man, you guys got some thin skin sometimes. Just like,
he will shut it down too. Like the moment he feels like he's being insulted, he's like, this is over. We're done.
Yeah. Which, like, to be fair, if you've got that much experience and that much success in the field, I don't care if your art's not for me. Like, you've got my respect. That's huge kind of stuff.
Something works. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been around as long as he has.
And there's a big thing in saying, I mean, this will relate back to our story here, but like, there's a big thing in knowing your audience. And that's one thing that I really appreciated with working with Mike is, you know, we talked about that throughout, like, who is the real audience on this? And the question is like, do you want to get this into as many hands as possible? Do you want this to be the mass marketed Toy Story version? Or do you want this to be like this true narrative and it finds an audience because it's authentic? And I think we ended up on the latter, which feels very noble, right? But like the idea of telling a story that feels authentic and feels lived in is so appealing. And, you know, as an indie comics person where you're like, would I like it if more people saw my work? Sure. But really, I want to make stories that I'm interested in too, because the likelihood of telling an interesting story, if I commit to it, is so high. And the likelihood of like telling a big 2 style story that gets to, you know, however many thousands of people, like that's a lot harder. And, you know, it requires a different kind of approach sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, and this, if I can just add on.
Go ahead.
Like, I mean, this might be an odd thing to say since we're promoting our Kickstarter, but I mean, this comic isn't for everyone. Not everyone who reads it is going to be like, you know, this is their jam. But I think that just, you know, I mean, you know, and also just to an extent, like what story, you know, really is for everyone. Like, I mean, Wall-E, maybe. But other than, you know, but I'm hoping that like the people this is for will really love it and it will be more for it since it is more for like kind of a specific audience.
Yeah, no, and I got to fill in like even for me, like I get the opportunity to read so many different comics, and plus my personal stuff that I collect and read. And I always appreciate like every effort put into every piece of comic made that I get to read. Even though I wouldn't typically I would never pick up a slice of life. I have no real interest in it, but then you add the horror element into it. I'm like, okay, you got my interest now, and let's see how this plays out. And honestly, this one worked for me on so many different levels. But let's build this world real quick. So Ashley and Jordie live very different lives depending on who's looking at them. What can you tell us about these characters?
Well, Ashley is they're partners, but Ashley is the leader. That kind of comes forward, and also she is the point of view character throughout. But they are also two people who rely on each other very much. One thing I told Jack towards the very beginning of all this, when he was working on this, is throughout the entire story, they flirt and they get into arguments, and sometimes they're not getting along, but throughout it all, they're always in love with each other. And so they do have this sort of balance of that, but also this extreme darkness that they're also facing. And also, they're also kind of used to the darkness too. I try to make it like, this is another, or at least it starts off as just being another gig. Like they're as used to this as I would be when I'm going to work, kind of thing. It's just, of course, at a certain point, does go a little off the rails.
No, that's typical, right? The only horror story out there is the one that you're currently in, right? Mm-hmm. And marriage can look like that from the outside sometimes. But 20 years in, and I'm doing good. So the peanut gallery coming from her room. But
you covered it. You bleeped it. I can tell that there was good banter, and if she can hear me, she knows that I thought whatever she said was funny.
In my ears. And then the doorbell ring, of course, too.
Dude, if she's not watching the stream now there's strife.
She's preparing for her. She's got summer college courses she's doing, so she's doing that. She's getting her money's worth from the university.
All right,
so
minded.
What makes them different from the typical Monster Hunter readers may be familiar with, a la, something is killing the children or something like that?
Well, I love Something's Killing the Children, although I think that's a great book. One thing that I do think sets them apart is that Ashley and Jordie are more like the kind of people you might run into at the grocery store. They are more just sort of like, more down to earth kind of folk who have just one way or another fallen into this world. With Ashley, we see how she fell into this world. With Jordie, I kept that a little bit more at arm's length. And so there is that side where they are just kind of, I don't want to say normal, but typical people who, you run into them at the grocery store. We all know couples like this, people who've been married for a while, they still flirt, they still are really in love with each other. And but at the same time, they have this other side to them. And I think it's that juxtaposition is the reason why I have stuck with these characters. I love stories with juxtapositions where you have these two sides of the characters, or the story, or the world that shouldn't fit, but absolutely do.
No, I like it. And I bring up the, Something's Killing Children because off the top of my head, that's the only thing I can really think of with people hunting demons. I mean, we're not going to run into Erica Slaughter with her machete or her chainsaw at the grocery store, I hope. If we do, then
she has to eat, right? I mean, but like, really, you look at like Van Helsing or whatever, just there are tons.
He does feast. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like John Constantine, people have to eat. People have to have opinions. And I know it sounds like I'm goofing here, but like the characters, when you read them, there's, in 24 pages, how many character interactions are you really going to have? But like in those limited interactions, you have a sense of, hey, what are they doing on a weekend? Like you have that sense, you could kind of project that. And I think the fact that people like them makes it more relatable, right? You can imagine whether or not that's you. I personally would never be an IPA drinker. I have no respect for those kind of people. And if any of your fans out there are those kind of people, I hope that they unfollow me or something like that. But these
are you saying you're a champagne and beers type of guy?
Nah. I'm an NA drinker, like an NA beer guy, and the pickings are so slim, and so but they've gotten better. So like an Athletic Brewing wit beer is very good. I will throw that out there. That's pretty solid. But anyway, I digress and trying to rile people up. These characters they're real people. They have that kind of attitude and that feel where I think a lot of horror, the tendency is to lean so hard into the camp element of it, which is awesome. And I love that. But when you try to do that and hold in there that idea of like, this is real character relationship drama and stress, those two things are really hard to hold at the same time. And so I think it is, just as big of a swing as like a character with a machete and like, I'm thinking of Bruce Campbell, like these are characters with cool big swings and I love them, but it's also a pretty big swing to say, you know what, we're going to make these characters feel grounded and real and still give them those kind of horrific elements. That's really compelling to me.
Yeah, no, again, that's what stuck for me with this is they're just a married couple chilling on the weekends. The only difference is instead of staying in and watching a movie, they're doing what they do. So it adds up this really cool element to what could be, a typical suburban night,
My comps for this, the comparisons when I've been like talking about it have been that it's Something's Killing the Children with the relationship drama of Saga.
Saga is so good. So that's a great comparison.
And also, Jack, by the way, I think you and I have very similar opinions about IPAs.
Yeah, it's tough not to. We lived in Madison, Wisconsin, which is, if you've seen that map of the United States.
I thought there's IPA heaven right there.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, anybody who is in Wisconsin for a long time, Carbon 4 has this Fantasy Factory beer. You can look it up, whatever. It's top tier, like double IPA, strong. But it's also like exactly what I don't like in an IPA. But I recognize it, again, not for me, but it's for somebody. And the people that like it, huge fans. So anyway, got to give them a shout out every once in a while.
And great cheese from up there. Like they make some of the best homemade cheese I've ever had the pleasure of eating.
Oh, yeah. This is a little fun fact here. So my wife's family is she's from the Green Bay area, and her grandpa started a very popular like cheese factory up there. And so she would tell these stories, and this is going to sound terrifying. They don't do this anymore. It's all quality, whatever. But she tells these stories about how when she would visit her grandparents, she would be allowed to go to the cheese factory, which again, cheese factory, love it. And she would be able to dip her hand into the thing of cheese curds. This is the part where I'm like, they don't do this anymore, I am sure.
Yeah.
And get
there's FDA regulations about this now.
Yeah, they probably don't want.
It is her fault. The reason why that there's now FDA regulations.
Right. Yeah, she's the one.
You lose a child or two.
Yeah, USDA is getting in there because they saw her digging her mitts through there to get a couple cheese curds. But you talk about this, and you have these cheese curds, and you're like, oh my god! If you understand what a squeaky cheese curd is, like first of all, yes, please come on. But it is. I mean, it's a culture, and people think it's exaggerating, but no, man, that's not. It's real. It's Yep.
So good. Like now I want cheese curds all of a sudden and I can't have them. But so I gotta ask you though, she's from the Green Bay area. Are the children there really born with cheese heads on their head? Like already they just pop out cheese head?
Yeah, no, they aren't. And this is I appreciate that you
This is a bad life choice later.
You're right. No. So I'm from Minnesota originally, living here now too. And so I'm like a lifelong hockey guy, and I'm also, voluntarily, I am willing to tell everybody that Minnesota sports are terrible. Like I love them. I will support the team. Hey, I am, happy when they win and whatnot.
That's the first step of the grieving process is recognizing.
I've accepted it. It's fine. Paul Bear's at your funeral, always going to let you down. It's great. Don't worry about it. Right. But like, then you meet somebody from Green Bay where they're like, oh God. And she's not a crazy football fan or whatever, but you meet somebody from Green Bay and the team can do no wrong. And Green Bay is basically Lambeau Stadium. and Lambeau Field, and you're just like, all right, guys, this is phenomenal. So anyway, these kids are born, and my in-laws are very excited for them to have like Packers gear on, and they're here, and they're like, are you gonna have a problem with them wearing Packers stuff in Minnesota? I was like, I don't care. I couldn't care less. Yeah. It's so hard to rile me up about football because I'm like, I assume that the Vikings will lose even if they already won. Like, there's no chance that it's going to happen.
Hey, they had a pretty decent year last year. At least I thought they were going to.
Yeah, they had. I will tell you that as a guy who watches very little football and like pretty much mostly hockey, I love Nine. I'm really proud of him. I'm glad he's getting out there and getting reps, but wow, is that a hard team to watch sometimes?
Dude, I'm a Bears fan. Trust me, I get it.
You're a Bears fan, you said?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but what? Worst thing you did in the past couple of years is Trubisky? I don't know. I say all this as if
I don't even know if he was the worst thing we did.
Yeah.
He's done worse.
Football can be really challenging to watch because you're like, God, like the Vikings have a very good receiver core, crazy good receiver core, and yet can they do anything in those games where it's really critical? Like, it's tough to watch. I don't know.
Yeah, dude, I get it. And we are way off on this tangent.
Sorry, no, this is my fault. I'm ruining this.
No, dude, this is the type of conversations I absolutely love here. But so I know this is a one shot, correct?
Yeah.
So when you close out this book, I mean, I've read it, but I'm pretending that I haven't read this yet. So how much world building exists beyond the pages of this comic? Is this going to be like, did you kind of leave it at a point where if you want to revisit later, you can?
I'm sorry, broke up there for a second. You mean like if you were to go ahead and read it again, would you pick up on more details?
No. Like from, so how much of this world exists beyond the pages of this comic? Meaning, like, if you wanted to come back and revisit this comic book and do another chapter of it, you could do that, or is it just a one and done? We're gonna file it away and never bring it back out again.
There definitely are things in my head about this world and the characters that didn't make it to the page. Because as much as you can tell a pretty big story in 24 pages, but you can only tell so much in 24 pages. So there were a few things that didn't quite make it. And there's just some stuff that's in my head that never really was intended, just to help flesh out the characters and the world and everything. So I could definitely give them another story. And I mean, if I were, I think it would be sort of like both a prequel and a sequel kind of thing, like with going back and forth in time. With maybe how they started off when they were in college and then also maybe pushing forward into the future. Because it's all about pushing forward into what happens next in stories.
I always say, if you mess up somewhere in your story, you can always fix it with a flashback.
Yep.
Problem is you don't have any grayscale that you can use, right? Like the whole book is in black and white. So what am I'm going to put everything in color now? Like it's Better Call Saul to go back. Like just, I don't know, man.
No, that would be cool though. Like have a flashback in color, then when you come back to reality, it's this gray world. That'd be kind of trippy.
Yeah, there's elements of that are in the back of my mind. Pixels, we'll go back.
Some gradients,
with the gutters. The gutters in the past are different from present.
See, you're being practical and actually solving this problem. I'm just goofing here. I can't change the color of the gutters.
So, I mean, what is this, pre-1993, before Image came along and said, the hell with gutters?
Mm-hmm.
Gutters? We don't need that kind of shit here.
Okay, in the past, the flashbacks are all dressed as cowboys.
There we go. Let's get all the ideas out. We
need more comic books about cowboys. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
And the last time I said that, we got 3. Like, almost within a couple of weeks of each other. It was kind of crazy.
Yeah, I feel like I have been seeing, and you're going to ask me for examples, and I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I feel like I've been seeing more indie comics that are Westerns. Yeah. Like they might be sci-fi Westerns or horror Westerns.
Hey, Disco Punk Comics released a bug spaghetti Western about bugs. Really great, by the way. Really great. But So what kind of demons inhabit this world? And I'll start that with you, Michael, and then you can kick it down to Jack to kind of tell us like how he approached those.
Okay. I'm picturing this being a world where there are more, the demons are more incorporeal. They are more like entities that will possess you, and it being less, maybe fewer like horns and flames, and more just like things that will get into your soul. I mean, there are references to like, sentient shadows and like cursed YouTube, like, things like that. But I'm picturing these kind of being things that might still be like a little bit distant from our world as far as exactly what's happening. Like it's not like there are demon bars or anything like that. And
sure would be cool if there was.
I mean, it might be.
Then it would be a different issue, a different book.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe in the prequel sequel we might deal with that. But that's sort of kind of like how at least I was like these things are still kind of in the shadow, harder to actually see. Maybe more of like I don't know if this is the best comparison, but maybe more in the direction of a Lynchian kind of thing.
Okay.
And like a Buffy kind of thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And that's kind of the way I approached it too. I mean, my thought is always, ounce for ounce, a person's body is their body. Like that's the basic idea. Like part of the reason that The Fly is such a good horror film is because you watch that body horror and you see that like the body is distending and it's getting thinner and bones are like, you can't imagine it without feeling.
I think for a lot of us, that was it was our very first body horror was The Fly.
Yeah.
And it's like the example for a reason. Like it is so good because it feels grounded and real to the human body. Like, and because of that, our brains can lock into it and think about, what does that feel like? What does that do? And so, I won't spoil too much on kind of the art in there or anything like that, but I approach it from that perspective of there can be things that are sort of horrifying to look at, but in reality, you are still comprising the same atoms as you were before. And the other thing I think that comes through in a couple of the different characters that I'm thinking of is, horror and demonic possession and that kind of stuff is just as much about the vehicle as it is about the driver. And so when like an evil embodies someone, it is not just the fact that you can visually see it, but it's also the words that you hear. And I'm thinking specifically towards the end of the book, there's a character where you're like, I don't even know if you're possessed, but you're saying some things that are that kind of malevolent spirit to them. This is a little evil right now. And that idea of, the line between possessed and evil and, what we think of as, within the realm of human behavior is pretty blurry at times. And because of that, I think you see the same thing in the way that I draw the horror.
The morals I don't know about the morals, but like demons versus humans and all that stuff, it's supposed to kind of be morally more gray. Like it's not supposed to be just like this black and white, humans are good, demons are evil kind of thing. Yeah. And once again, don't want to spoil too much, but it does kind of get into that.
Yeah. Clearly, y'all never vacationed down in the panhandle of Florida. You can't tell the difference there. That's just normal Floridian behavior.
I've been to Tallahassee and we vacation at the
That's
in-laws.
pretty close. Yeah, that's pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to different parts. I've been to Texas on purpose more than once, so that's fine. No, again, I'm just.
I love Texas. I'm a huge fan of Texas.
I was in I'm gonna sound like an idiot. I was outside of Houston for a while for a work thing, and it was super cool, super fun place to be. So I shouldn't knock it, but I'm gonna start talking about food right now. That's gonna be a problem.
Yeah, no, let's not do that.
Yeah, it's gonna get bad.
Definitely, yeah. So every book that has demons or monsters or what have you, they have rules. So were there any rules that you established early on that became important to the story in this world? And Michael, I'll start there with you, and then we can kick it down to Jack and just kind of see how he approached those rules, if there were any.
I think the main rule that I gave to myself, like I didn't want to give myself any rules that prevent the story from progressing the direction it needed to go. But I think the rules, like you see the demon, like you do see stuff like, you know, in the
Mhm.
panels with that, but I also wanted to keep it to, I don't mean you're there literally in the shadows, but I kind of wanted like what this thing is, and what this thing exactly is still kind of a little shadowy. Like we don't get their full backstory. And so I did kind of want to keep fully what is happening a little bit at arm's length. So I think that's the closest thing to a rule I really gave to myself. Although I really like the way Jack put it, as far as you only have so many atoms in your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the piece that comes through when I'm thinking about this is the fact that words matter. And that's not a hard and fast rule, but that idea of we say certain things in certain ways and they have certain effects, which is as vague as I can possibly be here. But like that comes up a couple different times. It's not a hard and fast rule. And I think anybody who pretends that, you know, saying specific words, you know, is always going to produce the same effect isn't the same thing. It's more like this intention, this meaning, this desire to do something is important to producing the effect that you're going for. And so, you know, I approached it with that lens, that when a character is speaking certain words or being instructed to speak certain words, that's significant. So, and you'll see it a couple times in the book that kind of comes through, but that's one of those cases where expression and those more subtle, nuanced kind of approaches to drawing are important. And because of that, it can be really challenging and taxing to be like, I got to make sure the expression is right. I can't overdraw this. I have to, you know, let people fill in the gaps of the details where they do. And so that's one thing that I try to really be cautious of is, you know, over prescribing what people should see on the page. I leave a lot of space to fill in the gaps. And I like that. And that's one thing that I think blends really nicely with Mike's writing.
As long as you cite the incantation correctly.
Yeah.
The way,
Yep.
I hope both of y'all got that reference. The
No.
Necronomicon, Army of Darkness. Make sure you say the incantation exactly.
It's been it's been a while since I've seen that one.
Otherwise, there's no reason for anybody to ever say incantation. Like, who says
I
incantation?
can think of a couple of reasons. Misspelling of
Inconsiderate, maybe?
Inconsiderate, yeah.
Yeah. But let's talk about creating horror in comics. So horror works differently in comics than it does in the movies. What makes horror effective in the comic book medium? And I'll start that with you, Michael, and then we can kick it down to Jack.
I mean, obviously there's the whole, like, the final panel on the odd pages where you set it up. And that doesn't just have to do with horror. I mean, you know, that you could do that with, like, you get down to that bottom panel and it's built up for something and you turn the page and you don't, unless if you flip through the book, of course, you don't know what you're going to see. And I've definitely been in that moment with, like, a bunch of books where there is that sort of pause where instead of the movies like pushing you forward, theoretically, you really have no control. And I think that's why a lot of people prefer watching horror at home as opposed to the theater, because they have more control over, you know, pausing.
Your final emotions.
But there is,
you don't want to scream like a girl in public. Come on.
There's that too. I mean, I like horror movies in theaters, but I've definitely met a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, I do want to see Obsession, but when I can see it at home. But yeah, there is that with comics, you're kind of choosing to turn that page. So you're kind of going at your own pace and you're kind of choosing to see the next thing that is going to be in that next panel on the even page.
Jack, I'll kick it down to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, comics is such an interesting medium because when you're looking at, you know, a movie or, you know, 4x3, I guess old school TV shot, you know, there is a format and a specific way that you compose a page or you compose an image or you compose a story, and it all hits those same third lines. Like, I'm speaking very specifically to that, you know, that artist aesthetic of, you know, things are proportioned in a certain way. We establish a two shot in this way. We establish things in a certain way. But with comics, you don't have to do that. And comics, you're allowed to break those lines and you're allowed to have something jump out of the page by literally overlapping that gutter, right? You're allowed to have that happen. And because of that, it is more graphic and it's more dynamic. And then there's the other side of it. That's like, movies are 24 frames a second, or were for a long time, right? And comics are, I don't know, you spend 20 to 30 minutes reading 24 pages and, generously 100 panels, 120 panels. So 120 frames over 30 minutes of time, you are really filling in a lot of those gaps. And that, again, appeals to that kind of horror aesthetic of like, all right, there is stuff that I need to fill in. And so if you can get someone really engaged with the story that you're telling and let them live and breathe in the art and the writing, and frankly, just for the amount of time, they're spending a lot of time with that art. If you can let them feel like they're engaged with it and trying to interpret and trying to feel that atmosphere, that is really effective. And then panel to panel, having them try to interpret what is happening, how we're bouncing around the space. That does a lot of the same things that good horror does, right? It doesn't overprescribe to the audience. It lets them fill in. It trusts them to read, and it trusts them to understand and interpret nuance. So, I mean, that's one thing that always draws me to it in comics. I've done quite a bit of horror comics. I was looking back at my, history. I'm like, I'm not a horror guy all the time. Like a lot of the stuff, if I showed you it's within arm's reach, it's very adorable. It's cute little bears and stuff like that. But I gravitate towards horror a lot because I think it has a lot of that serious but still explosive kind of energy to it.
Mm-hmm. No, I horror has always pulled me more toward it. I'm not a gore guy or blood splatter guy. It's just such a you can do so much within the genre.
Yes.
You can play with so much, and it just kind of has the ability to pull you in, even if you say, oh, I'm not a horror guy, but you find that right comic book that's built around horror, you're going to get them. You're going to pull them in, and they're going to be like, maybe I am a horror guy, or maybe I'm just a fan of this specific horror genre. But I don't know what it is. Just something about it just speaks to the soul.
I mean, horror works so well with other genres.
Yeah.
Like
you can mix and match it, right? Fantasy horror, sci-fi horror, and I love them all.
And it's also, of the mainstream genres, it's the least predictable, I feel like. Where, I mean, it's also like I went to see Obsession like a couple weeks ago, and I had considerably less of an idea of exactly where this movie was going to go than I might, if, as much as I love superhero movies, than if I went to see a superhero movie. Where it's I mean, there are twists and turns and stuff like that, but a lot of times, and there is that comfort of, okay, the hero is most likely going to win, and at least to a certain extent. Whereas with horror, it really is up in the air of
they don't have to win.
These characters are going to survive. And there are some horrors that have happy endings, and I feel like most have at least somewhat complex endings.
I'm a fan of the complex endings, or a fan of when the good guy doesn't win, the bad guy doesn't win. The people reading this at the end of the day is going to be winning. That's what I'm a fan of. And let the bad guy win sometimes. It's okay for that to happen. The good guy does not always have to win.
Yeah, an interesting story, like an interesting ending, is way more appealing than the surety of either one. Frankly, like the bad guy winning is sometimes, like, people talk about that with Infinity War. Spoilers for a 9-year-old movie, something like that, 8-year-old movie. But they talk about the bad guy winning as such this revolutionary idea, and it's like, as long as it's earned, or as long as it feels like it wasn't wasting your time or teasing you the whole time, like that. That's really appealing to me, those kind of things. And, this is not a spoiler at all, but I think there are elements of both sides of that for this story that make it a pretty satisfying read.
No, I agree. And this is for both of you. And I'll start it with you first, Jack. Were there any scenes that were just particularly difficult to create for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there are some kind of, I think of the story and kind of, there's 5 beats that I have in my head, and there's a couple of them that are more action or more moving through the space kind of oriented, and some of those quieter beats where, it's a conversation, it's a transitional moment moving from one space to the other, and what they do in that space in the interim is, those can be a little tricky, right? Because the idea that you see a lot on screen is somebody's always holding a thing. There's never two people talking with just their hands in their pockets. One of them's got a cup of coffee or whatever. And those things can be a little difficult or feel insincere to fill in. And so for me, I have to work with like, all right, how do I want to show the space in an interesting way without it feeling like I'm trying to oversell the fact that they are walking from one room to another, right? How do I make that feel compelling? And like, I'm not wasting their time reading it or my time drawing it, while still knowing that what we're doing fundamentally is showing that transition so that it isn't so abrupt that they're transported from one spot to another. So those are the spots that take a little time. The way that, as an artist, I try to account for that is to just be honest with what's happening on the page. Like, give you the raw illustration. This is these two characters moving from here to there. And sometimes those are the most simple and frankly, probably the panels I spend the least time on. Yeah. But that also is just, it comes from a place of honesty about like what is exciting as an artist to draw. Not every panel is the most bombastic thing on earth because, interesting panels are defined by how they stand relative to uninteresting panels. And I think sometimes it's okay to be like, this one's gonna be a little flat, right? It's okay for those to be a little flat. Yeah.
You got to tell a story somehow, and the art's what tells the story with the words backing it up. So people are going to be walking in a comic book. So
you can't leap everywhere. You can't bound.
It can't all be splash pages.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sure there are comics.
Do you not remember Image 1993?
I was trying to think of the one that is 24 splash pages in a row. That it exists.
I actually have that one, I think. Yeah. I mean, it is an Image comic. I just don't remember which Image comic.
Yeah, I am going to be looking this up because it's always just hilarious to me. Like, as early on in drawing what I thought were good comics, I was like, I want to do that because it looked easy. Yeah. And I was like, I'm an idiot. I know myself now. Hey. It's fine.
And I'll kick the same question to you, Michael, from a writer's perspective. As you're piecing together this story, like, was there just that scene where you're like, whether it was an emotional moment, a complex moment between the characters or between the characters and a demon, just something that was just like, damn, I don't know.
The ending. And obviously,
of course, it's always the ending.
Of course, I can't get into too much details. But yeah, I wrote like 5 to 6 different endings for this thing. Because like literally what we were just talking about, I don't want it to be a sunshine, lollipops, puppy dogs kind of thing. But I also kind of didn't want it to be like completely grim and like, and it's fine. And there are some stories where it's fun to have like puppy dogs and lollipops into those endings. But for this one, I wanted that complex ending. And, those are the best. And I feel like all genres, but they're also the hardest to write and to like, I had endings that have nothing to do with, what we ended up with, and I'm not just trying to like, whatever, but, I definitely picked their best one because looking back, some are like, no, I'm glad I did. I mean, I feel like a lot of the time, you have to get the bad ideas out. That like, it's almost sort of like, I wrote out most of these things before I scrapped them, but many times I just make a list of different things that could happen next. And the first 3 or 4 are like the very typical predictable ones, but then once you start getting those out of your brain and you start like looking for other options, that's when you start to get things that are a little bit more interesting.
So this is kind of a question for both of you, and I don't know if I've ever asked this question, but it's always something that's in the back of my mind, is at what point, because comic books obviously have a beginning, a middle, and an end, but at what point between the middle and the end do you start laying in those breadcrumbs or those little things that let you know that, hey, we're getting close to the end of the story?
It is definitely around the 3/4 mark, I would say. Once again, trying to avoid getting into too much details, but there is definitely that you turn.
Yeah, that was just in general. I don't want you to spoil nothing. It was just like, because I've seen that so many different ways. I've seen where you can predict the end from the beginning of the book, like how I'm like, oh, that's almost a dead giveaway how this is going to end, and that is the ending. But it's just kind of like how did you go about that? You know, like 3/4 of the way in is really good because it's still enough time to lay the base and the foundation to build to the end.
Yeah, and sometimes I wasn't necessarily going for it with this one. Sometimes being able to kind of predict or see a twist coming isn't the worst thing in the world. Like I feel like a twist where you can kind of see it coming is better than one that's so far out of left field.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, the rules don't matter anymore. Like,
yeah,
you can do whatever now. Why not bring back Elvis? Like, kind of thing.
He's still alive and well, man. He's in Puerto Rico, I heard.
But it's like, and I swear this is not meant to be a brag, but when I saw the movie Us in theaters, I did at a certain point, like halfway through, predict the final twist. But it was less of a, oh, I'm so look at me kind of thing. I saw the end. And it was more like a, oh my God, that would be too perfect. I'm going to be mad if they don't have that happen kind of thing. And I feel like
it's like
those, they're the best because they're just the most natural thing to come about. Honestly, now that I think about it, I put breadcrumbs about where the story was going. I'm not necessarily saying like I was putting up a neon lights, but I put breadcrumbs in like maybe the 4th or 5th page about the
like that
page.
I like that because I missed them. I'm gonna have to go back now.
It'll be tough to reference without spoiler or anything like that, but
no, we're gonna say, but I can go back
name.
and look at it though. Yeah.
But
no, I was gonna say it's one of those like Bruce Willis, you know, when he's like, oh, the kid said, oh, I see dead people. I'm like, I bet Bruce Willis is dead in this movie.
Yeah.
And
I completely called the ending of Miracle.
Of which one?
Miracle.
Okay.
The one about the U.S. and then
no.
No.
I see where you're going with this.
You're with me on this? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So,
the thing is based off history.
That's fine. They defeat the Russians in the end at the 1980 Lake Placid Olympics. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Fantastic movie though.
Oh, really good movie, and people dunk on it. It's a very good movie.
Very good movie.
Most people I know like that movie. I didn't know people were really dunking on it.
Nostalgic. People who don't have souls.
Okay.
People who want to be contrarian, and I know so many of them. But yeah, the whole idea of like, putting in breadcrumbs, putting in hints. I think a lot of it is more so than that kind of mechanical element of storytelling. It's also just about how you think about the role of a writer and a storyteller and how they relate to the audience. Like, a twist that is expected is probably a good thing because for some fraction of the audience it wasn't, and for some fraction it was something that they could see coming a mile away because they intuitively understand the way that you tell stories, and that's great. And I always think that the resolutions should feel earned. Like what you see on the page should feel like something that makes sense, that the inertia of the world is leading to, and that's a product of like the character's development. And that's certainly something we see with both Ashley and Jordie, is that those characters develop over the course of the story, and the way that the story ends. I don't know that if I asked anybody to write down after reading page 1, what does page 24 look like, that they would get it, because that's not the point, right? The point is, if you can imagine how these characters develop and you watch that development, you could reasonably predict how they would interact with the world as it is when they find it on page 24. So the same thing is with how I draw it. Like you see, characters' bodies stiffen, you see their like the stoicism or the horror on their face as they go through the world, and that is how you show that people are growing, developing, reacting to the world around them.
I like it.
And
you ready to go ahead. I'm sorry, Michael. No, go ahead.
What I was going like kind of thinking about with like the whole like horror is the most unpredictable of the, like, if somebody were to give me, I don't want to list names because I love a lot of these movies. If somebody were to give me like a very kind of typical action movie, sometimes just looking at the DVD, I can might be able to give you a vague outline. of what's going to happen. Very often the trailers are basically the whole movie condensed into like 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But I do feel like comics can very often be more unpredictable to a certain extent. Maybe it's because like they're going for a more targeted audience, less for everyone. But I think particularly horror, it's sometimes yes, and ironically, like Scream is like made its whole franchise based off of like certain tropes and like how predictable movies can be. But I feel like there are others that really is just like there are moments and there's like, where the hell is this thing going? And I love those moments so much.
No, Scream is one of the first movies I can remember where they walk you through the tropes as you get to them in the movie. And I enjoyed the first one. It was after like number 3, I was just like, are we done here? Can I go home now?
Yeah, the
like, and I haven't watched them after that, it's nothing against them. It's just I don't have free time. So
I personally, with what was going on behind the scenes of the camera and Nev Campbell not getting paid the money should have been paid. I have issues with the 6th one. But if I just look at the 6th one in terms of story, I really love that one. Personally, I think that's a good example of like shaking up a franchise, like with the new setting and stuff.
Yeah.
And that one like if you haven't seen it, I would at least give it a shot.
Eventually, I'll get around to them again.
Okay. I've heard the latest one is not so good.
But let's jump in and talk about the Kickstarter that is launching tomorrow, I believe.
Tomorrow, June 16th.
Spot on. How has been the pre-launch and getting ready for this to go live tomorrow? Like, did y'all, I know everybody wants to get the pre-launch and the backers built in already. And how has that been going for you on this project?
It's been going good. I've been, of course, like letting people know about it, on social media, everything. Just sort of, I have a fantastic blurb from Scott Snyder, which I have put up all over my socials. And so, it's this is the first Kickstarter I've ever run, but as far as I can tell, it's going very well.
Jack, are you in on the Kickstarter as well, or are you letting Michael do all the work?
Letting Michael do all the work. Writers have it easy. I'm kidding.
Like a real artist right there. Let the writer do the work.
Show up, you draw for a long time, and then I don't know, you check out when you can.
You've definitely put more than you've definitely put your share in.
No, I mean, frankly, that is the toughest thing. Like, I think about that a lot with writers is they have to do the difficult part of like conceiving an idea, writing it, and then finding an artist who's going to follow through with it and then hound them. Like, not that that's Michael, but like, that's the experience. I think a lot of the time is art is slow, art is fastidious and picky. And like artists get to say, look at how difficult it is to make my art, which it is. I mean, art is not easy, but the other side of it is like, as a writer, and especially someone who's trying to put together their first and a Kickstarter in general, like the amount of work that goes into self-marketing, self-promoting, finding places to talk about your work, finding people like you to chat about them with who are like going to be interesting and ask good questions. And like all of that stuff is really challenging.
There's not a lot to go around.
Man, it's seriously tough. Like I've been a part of Kickstarters. I have a book that I've done with a friend of mine where it's, part 1 of 3, and the amount of work that goes into that Kickstarter as well as this one, it is substantial. And so, making comics as an independent person trying to recruit from Kickstarter, like I said this with my last book, and it funded and all of that good stuff. If you don't think that the art or the story is good enough to fund for this, I get it. Like, and that's not a dig. I think this is a really good book. I'm really proud of the work that's in there, but like, not for everybody. There's going to be somebody who's like only wants sunshine and rainbow stories, and that's just not what this one is. Yeah. But find one that is. Find a book that is, because whoever that story is written by, that person put in a ton of work, and behind the scenes to put together a Kickstarter, put together interesting tiers, talk about their work, shamelessly self-promote all day, every day for weeks ahead of time. And then the month of it feel stressed. Like, is that not worth $5-10? Like, I've such
that's spot on. Yeah. And not like, so you do all this work, you put together the Kickstarter, and then hopefully you have a good artist behind you who's also like, hey, check this out.
Constantly bumping it with a new way of phrasing the same thing, like, please take a look at our Kickstarter. We try really hard.
It's a joint effort, right? And I know I'm in on this too. Like, as soon as it comes across Instagram or wherever it is, I'm sharing it, I'm adding it to my story, and I'm doing all those things too. Like, I always tell people, like, it takes an army to raise a child or whatever, but it's the same way with indie comics. It takes a group effort to really push these out. You got your friends in on it, your parents, your moms, your uncles, your cousins, your artist's family, the podcaster's family. We're all like, hey, check this book out, support this book, buy this book. And
it feels so great. Sorry to cut in, but
no, go ahead.
It feels so great where it's like people who I have not expected who've been so encouraging and excited. Obviously, like these people who I'm in touch with, but I've just been surprised by how encouraging they are. With like this Kickstarter, with the comic, with the feedback, all that stuff. So yeah, you're right. It really does take like a group to really get these things into the world.
And it's daily. It's not just, I did my part. It's like, no, what did you do today though?
Yeah.
Or what'd you do this morning at lunchtime and this afternoon and before you went to bed?
Did you do your multiple posts? Yeah.
Yeah.
And did you do it on all the platforms too? Because people are fragmented and in different places. And yeah.
Trust me, I got all of them. And it's like, I think I got everything but TikTok. And that's possibly on the list next.
Dude, you got to get on there. You're going to blow up. I can just tell it. I just know that when you get on there, I mean, what if that was your audience? What if that's the last gateway?
Who knows? Like, it's just one of those where it's like, do I really want to do this? Because it would just be for like the short clips, like they go to YouTube, they go to Instagram. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I might as well get a TikTok and just chunk them on there too, and just see, It'd be nice to make some money off of this.
Right. That's a quote on the tombstone of every comics artist.
Hey, it ain't just the comic artists, it's us podcasters who support the comic artists too. I think we're all our epitaphs say, hey, I wish I could make some money off of this.
Yeah. Tip your servers, tip your podcasters, tip your writers.
Exactly.
I know there's tiers and stuff. I don't know if that you were going to ask about this at all, but we got some cool tiers. I mean, if you want to see stuff that I've personally written and drawn myself, there's like a package with a couple different shorts that I've done. There's like, I think I put 20 pages of one-page comics that I made, all written by me. Another story that I wrote worked on with a friend of mine that is like this throwback pastiche of like old X-Men stuff with a heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we lost him.
Did we lose Jack?
Yeah, we lost Jack.
But
I think this is the point in the movie where he falls off the door and he just kind of slowly.
I read these comics. I can definitely speak for them myself. That they're lots of fun, and it's a great tier. You get a bunch of extra stuff with that tier.
Yeah.
One that you also get feedback from me. Obviously, I write comics, but I also have written a bunch of short stories. So you can sign up to get feedback from me on your own creative writing. And of course, the tier that I think is the most interesting is you give us a topic and Jack and I do a custom-made one-page comic just for you.
That's actually kind of cool. Yeah. I've never seen anybody do that one before either.
It was Jack's idea. I think it's a fantastic idea. And
now I've seen characters be drawn into the comic book, but I've never seen it to where like, oh, if you pay us, we'll do you a quick one-page comic. But that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I think
definitely unique.
Yeah. I think George R. R. Martin did one, and this was for charity, where whoever like raised the most money, he would kill them off in the next book or something.
I do remember when he did that.
But yeah, no, this is, you get your own one-page comic based off a topic of your choosing. So it can be UFOs, it can be weddings, it can be funerals, cats, if you want.
Why not all of them at once?
All of them.
Oh, he managed to swim up from the icy depths and re-grab
quite
the
hear you
board
yet.
to join the rows. No, he's good. Looks like he switched to mobile.
Yeah.
Sure did.
That's
Yeah.
right. Okay.
He's back from the icy depths.
Yeah. Now I'm in portrait mode, so if anybody wants to see what I'd look like vertical, this is it.
Did Rose pull you back up out of the icy waters?
Oh man, it's been a while since I heard that joke. That's good. That's a really
It was
she
appropriate
did.
for the time.
No, I love it. I'm not even dunking on you for that. That's a very good joke. No, something froze with you.
On the door.
Yeah. I was saying something hopefully horribly interesting about having cool comics available. Did we say that?
You did say that, and then Michael filled in to where one of the tiers is y'all will write them a 1-page comic about whatever they want they want.
My favorite one.
So-
I did that with a previous book, and you get, I don't know, a handful of backers who like your art or want to hear a story about whatever. And it's one of those things where you're like, am I going to spend a little bit of extra money for a 1-page custom comic? Like if you think about, I'm going to do an art fair in a couple weeks here. Original art itself, just to be the owner of it or the commissioner of it, is expensive. And if you think of where we're pricing this for writing, multiple panels, and it's custom to your design, to spend what you would spend, which I think is like $100 on it, is really affordable. So anyway, just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, his video is froze, but we can at least hear him still. Oh, there he's back. He's back.
You're still here.
But no, it's a really cool tier because I've never seen that done before. I've seen like where you can be drawn into the comic book or killed in the comic book. I've seen that many, many times, but to be offered up like, hey, we will do a 1-page comic for you. That's really cool and unique. Something that, again, I have not seen in all my Kickstarters I have discussed here. And that's a lot.
One of the stretch goals we have, which I'm really excited about, is a author artist commentary, where you get the script from us, but we commentary on different decisions we made, a little bit of a backstory behind certain scenes, like that kind of thing. And maybe I'll include some references to those 6 endings that didn't quite make the final cut.
That could be good or bad. Or you get the feedback like, what the hell were you thinking? How many IPAs did you have this day?
0, I can guarantee you. IPAs.
That was for Jack.
I appreciated it. Yeah. I can put a little wheat beer tracker on the bottom of there for the ones that were consumed along the way as we're making this book.
But I know a lot of prep goes in to doing this, but what would you say has been the biggest challenge leading up to the launch day tomorrow morning? And that's for both of you. I know it's a lot of hard work on both of y'all. So,
I think a lot of it is Kickstarter. I mean, my experience with it is that it's fairly user friendly, but it was also learning a whole new skill. Where it's just being a creator, obviously you need to learn the skill of creating, and all that really, and I'm being legit, I'm not being sarcastic, the fun stuff of creating your stories. But then there is also learning, promotion and, that you don't want to be annoying, but also you want to promote your stuff. You
also got to be annoying to be able to promote your stuff.
And so it's, I think for me, it was just okay, I'm going to have to be stepping forward and creating this Kickstarter page and studying other Kickstarter pages and all that stuff. There's no real one thing in that was particularly difficult, but it was just sort of this conglomeration of all of that. And it was honestly for over a month, kind of just the first thing I did in the morning, where I just woke up and went straight at that, because And then after a while, it just kind of became more natural and more like, hey, I'm actually having fun. I actually did at the end of the day have fun creating the Kickstarter page, but it just seemed like a lot, and it was just one step at a time.
Yeah, and I can tell you, like, as a supporter of many Kickstarters, if I land on a Kickstarter page that caught my attention, and then when I get to the page, I'm like, what happened here?
Mm-hmm.
I immediately just leave it. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to decipher what you're doing here. I see you've misspelled like a lot of stuff. I see you repeat yourself 3, 4, 5 times over the course of, you only get so much space on a Kickstarter page.
Mm-hmm.
And like, take the extra, time to build this page, because you can save it and nobody will ever see it until you're ready for them to see it. So yeah, just take that time and put it together properly, make it look good. Have somebody else look at it, like, hey, honey, come here and look at this and let me know what you think. And then she goes, hey, by the way, you misspelled that word 5 times, Yeah, just catch those things.
When I see stuff like that, it's less like, okay, you misspelled that word. We all make typos, but you didn't get anyone else to read this over, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think if I did have to say one thing with creating this the page that was the hardest for me was the trailer, which we got a great trailer. The guy who I hired to make the trailer, he did a fantastic job by taking all of this information, things that I wanted to say, and condensing it into something that was very tight. I mean, I've done stuff like that before. I've written for other stories, had to sum it up in 1 or 2 sentences, but I mean, I can't say it never gets a little easier, but it's never easy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes sense to me, but I also kind of just do that. I spend a lot of time on Kickstarter and doing this kind of stuff. So for me, it's kind of like I have immediately start noticing things as I'm going through it. And I've been like, I will shoot the creator an email like, hey, I noticed on your Kickstarter there was this, this, and this. I'm like, what is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and it's I consider it a constructive thing. I'm not doing it out of being a meanie or anything like that, or trying to, be an ass. But it's just like, hey, I don't know if you noticed this, but you might want to check this.
Yeah, and if you do it early on enough in the campaign, you're probably doing them a favor if it's something they can edit.
No, I always appreciate like when I request materials and stuff like that. Like, and they say, just go ahead and send it to me. That way I can like at least, hit to notify me on launch. That way I know when it launches. And then also let me see it beforehand. That way I can go through and just read what's coming up and read the details, the finer print of things. So we've already talked about the rewards, the variants, and some of the extras. Is it just going to be a cover A, cover B type of deal, or did you reach out to some other artists to be like, hey, can you do a cover for this book?
We've got one cover for it. We actually one tier that wasn't mentioned is that Jack made a really fantastic poster.
Cool.
So you can definitely also get that. But it's a total of 9 tiers and 3 stretch goals. And a lot of the different tiers. So it's like, obviously digital comic, physical comic, and then combined. And then it goes on with like the more bigger ones where you get some of Jack's comics as well.
I like it. I really do. And Jack, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's you see a lot of that with Kickstarters, and I think part of it is you want to give people opportunities to, engage with it as much or as little as they want. Like, if what you truly want is just to read that thing on whatever screen you can, awesome, let's go. Like, right, let's get that comic in your hands. But I think part of this too is with 2 comics creators who have either the experience or the wherewithal to give advice, like Mike has offered with some of the, the feedback, or share commentary and share thought on the process for people that might be newer and learning. I think part of it is an awareness of, where we're at in our practice, our craft. Like, I will not suggest at all that either of us are these incredibly well-established comics creators or anything like that. However, I've made like 500 pages of comics in my life, and a lot of that gives me some insight that I'm always happy to share about the work that I'm doing, and share more of what we like to do with people that are willing to back at that level. And that's one thing that, with all the different tiers that are available, it makes sense. I think some of these newer comics creators that are out there, it totally makes sense if they're like, I've got 2 tiers, because what I can do is I can make a physical and I can make a digital. And this might be my first comic I've ever made, and that comic deserves to get printed. Like, I want to hear those stories. Those are really cool.
Yeah. No,
but one thing, when you see all those different options, it's evidence not just of our confidence in the work that we're putting out, but also like our willingness to engage and support and be there for people that want to support us as well. Like, if you want a poster that I think is pretty cool, that is a little bit of a different style, let's go. Like you can back at that level. Or if you really like what we're doing and you're like, I don't want you to do any more horror, I want you to tell me a goofy 1-page story about something, let's do that too. Like, let's figure out ways to make that happen. So I'm all for it. I love doing those comics where there's more variety in those tiers as well, because it shows you what people want to see. And there's nothing more fun in comics than having the conversation with people, like figuring out what they're interested in and figuring out what they like about what you do.
That's absolutely why I love doing this, because I get to talk to different creators, different perspectives, different lessons learned in life along the way. And I always tell people in the beginning, I'm like, you're getting your feet wet, keep it simple, And then as you get, some dirt under your fingernails, some calluses on your hands, then start offering up those other tiers. But in the beginning, just get that first one made, and then you can come back and do more.
Yeah. And this is just sort of like I've, and I'm not trying to like bash anyone else's whatever, but I've definitely seen some Kickstarter campaigns where they have like so much stuff, and I'm like, dude, I just want your comic. Like, that they just like kind of add in like so many bells and whistles. There is something to be said for just like, straightforward, like, you can get a bunch of extra cool stuff from us, but it's right there if all you're looking for is a really fun comic.
Yeah, no. And again, sometimes it's just best keep it simple. So I got to ask though, as a first-time Kickstarter, what does success look like for you on this campaign? I mean, outside of the obvious of, yes, I want to get the book made,
outside of the obvious, we make however much money, we hit all our stretch goals. I think that success would be that this goes to a bunch of people who have never met me and who I don't know, who just, either they see it on social media, they see it something that one of my friends or, just other complete strangers shared, and they trust in the campaign and what they see enough to go ahead and buy a comic. And I think to have like a bunch of people do that, that would really be what feels like success to me.
Yeah. And I've seen people who have, and they have told me like their first campaign failed, but the lessons they got from that campaign in subsequent campaigns more than made up. That failing that one was just the fuel they needed to add onto the fire to keep pressing forward, and then followed it up and got that same book that didn't get funded on the very next go around. So W's and L's here, but it always feels good to take that dub on the first one, right?
Yeah, definitely pushing for this thing.
Yeah, no,
for all of this to be funding. Like I'll still learn some lessons, even if if we're successful. No,
I think. Yeah, I mean, you're going to learn something new, as I feel like we all should do every day, is learn something new. But no, 100%. And so let's talk a little bit about the look ahead for just the indie comics and just looking ahead on things. What have you learned? So this is your very first comic book. What have you learned from creating this project that you'll carry over into future work? outside of the obvious of picking and choosing the proper artist in the beginning.
Yeah. You know, I putting in the contract, no AI, as far as Illustrator goes. That's the big lesson I learned, because before Jack, I did hire a different illustrator, and we were very close to that finish line. And then I found out that they were using AI, and I had to disconnect everything from them. I had to take all of the promotion I put with their illustrations off social media. That was not a fun couple of hours.
Dude, and you put them so many different places. If you're like me, mine go everywhere.
I tried to scrub as best as I can. Obviously, there's never like a, but and I try to make it as clear as possible, like what happened and why I'm no longer with that illustrator. So going forward,
that's the hard part, because you're going to have to tarnish the person, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But by pulling stuff, people kind of already know.
Yeah. The individual pled ignorance as far as, but yeah.
Of course.
So I then got smart and was like, hey, I had a great illustrator on Patches Rebellion. And so I reached out to Jack, and I did the smart move and reached out to Jack, and he made a fantastic book. But yeah, that is one of my big lessons, is like in every contract I do with illustrators, I do like have a no AI stipulation, and they all get it. I'm working on another short with a different illustrator, and he said, oh no, dude, I absolutely appreciate you're having me sign that kind of thing. So yeah.
No, and we were talking about this before we went live, and I have now included stipulations in my own draft emails that it's just a generic email that goes out to all creators. And I'm doing my very best to not use AI in creating thumbnails anymore. However, that's on the person, right? If they send me stuff that I can use to promote and to build stuff, then I don't have to, resort to using AI, because I don't want to use that going forward.
Yeah.
However, I am keeping that option in my back pocket because it's a thumbnail, and I don't consider a thumbnail a piece of art. I'm just selling this like the episode to people, and that's the hard part on my end, is I have to market and push this out to people. And but yeah, I'm definitely doing my best to not go that route anymore. But again, and people are like, oh, Gen AI. I've never used Gen AI. I don't even know what Gen AI is. I use a different program, so I don't know what it uses. It's just an easy program that lets me do things. Yeah. So,
and I mean, with comics, they are themselves, works of art, and art is supposed to be communication from people. Like, I mean, obviously there's more to it than that, but it's like, so it's like, I don't want something that's, that's in my hand. I mean, a story that I'm reading and I'm getting emotionally invested in. I want that from another person.
100%.
I mean, honestly, and this is a whole other conversation, but like, I feel like this is sort of like, people are starting to get less interested in, not everyone, but a lot more people are getting less interested in stories, whether it be movies or comics or books in general. They're clearly made by committee. They really want, this is this director's vision, this writer's vision, this artist's vision, as opposed to like things that are clearly like, this was made in a boardroom and they were like, for stocks, kind of thing.
I mean, and we've seen that over the last couple of years, right? With so many small indie movies having such huge success. I mean, we got YouTubers out here making, I forgot how much that movie made, like a few $100 million on a $30,000 budget or something.
Like Obsession and Backrooms both beat Star Wars. And I've only seen Obsession. Of those two movies, I've only seen Obsession. I'll check out Mandalorian when it's on Disney Plus or whatever. But it's like, what I saw the trailer.
I love Star Wars. Like, Star Wars is my jam. However, I'm not a people like public like too many people in a small crowded space. Ever since COVID, I don't like it. Like, I don't mind being in public. I'm going to a concert in October. So, I mean, I can tolerate it in small bunches, but I don't know, something about the close proximity of being in a movie theater on opening night where it's shoulder to shoulder and people are nasty to begin with. They don't cover their mouths. They don't wash their hands. You know, it just like, I don't know if that person is sitting next to me. So it's kind of hard for me to want to go to those places. And I hate that. I used to be a very sociable person and love going out, but yeah, I just can't do it opening night. I'll do a Saturday morning as soon as the movie theater opens up and then go see a movie.
Yeah, I see. Definitely social anxiety has shot up for me with COVID.
Yeah.
But honestly, going to the movies, like in some ways, 2023, which was the year I started going back to the movies more, like that, they kind of became more special experiences to me to a certain extent. I just remember seeing, and then maybe that's why I have such an attachment to Scream 6, because that was one of the first movies I saw back in the first movie I saw back in theaters was No Way Home. And I think I'll never be able to like objectively judge that movie just because being in the theater was like meant so much to me. I just like whatever, like I loved it no matter what kind of thing. You know?
Yeah. I think during COVID, when movie theaters started renting out, like where you can rent the entire like theater, like an entire like room for a party to watch a particular movie that you wanted to watch. And I think I took my daughter and a group of her friends to see one of the Demon Hunter movie arcs. And like that movie just like, I love that movie. Like I've never had seen Demon Hunter up until that point. I've seen that, or Demon Slayer, my bad. Demon Slayer. She heard me. And
now I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah. So now I just have this affinity for that one movie, even though I've started watching the anime since. Yeah. But I just like that movie, and during COVID is kind of what made it work for me.
Yeah. Well, I had a very good friend who or I have, it's one of my best friends. I don't know if I say doesn't have sense. He huge fan of Back to the Future. And he was very immunocompromised, so he's not going out at all. But he basically did that. He rented the theater just for himself to watch Back to the Future. And I remember him talking about it and being like, should I do it? Because it's gonna be a bunch of, and like I forgot what the amount was, but it's like, dude, just do it. You can afford that, and like the universe owes you at this point for you to have that fantastic experience. You know.
No, and I think that's really cool. And it's also one of those where, especially in that situation, if you can afford to do it and give yourself that one thing, freaking do it. You know, the only thing stopping you from doing that is yourself.
Yeah.
But
it got to the point where like I probably would have paid for half of it if you needed it. Like, you know, it's like I just want you to have this experience.
No, and hey, dude, that's a great friend right there. That's those friends you keep around. But so we're sitting here, we're discussing this, but if this campaign is a huge success, and I know you're already working on a story, but does this everything kind of clicking into place for you? Does that draw more comic books from you later down the road?
Well, I mean, I've already written a 5-issue series. That one's completely unrelated to this one. This one's a huge success and people are asking for more. I will definitely get, like, as much as this is a one shot, it's beginning, middle, and end. I will definitely, I do have like some ideas bouncing around my head as far as like, you know, what else can I do with these characters? As far as what I have right now, I do have that short that's currently being illustrated, and I do have a 5-issue scripts. And so I am, you know, in talks as far as like getting that created right at this point.
Nice. So the Kickstarter launches tomorrow. This is your opportunity to speak directly to potential buyers. Why should readers support? Why should readers support the secret lives of demon hunters?
Well, first of all, I have to give Jack a ton of credit. He worked very hard on this, and it shows. The illustrations are excellent, both with the ones that are like kind of set in more, normal scenes, and also with all the really cool stuff that happens to the demons with it. If I can say this about like my own writing, this is a story that definitely has horror in it, but it's also a story with heart. I think of myself like, and that's one thing that does connect a lot of my writing, is that you do have like, some grisly dark stuff happening, but there's also a lot of heart and humor in it as well. And I think that this is a comic that will appeal for people who are looking for that kind of thing, who want to see the heart and emotion bounce off of the demon action as well.
Yeah. And you don't get both of those together often, or often enough, I should say.
Yeah.
So it's good when you get to see them all together, like kind of come together into one good story. And I will say it is a damn good story.
Thank you.
It's different. It's unique. It was like very fun to read. So yeah, anybody out there, the links to everything are down in the description, to whether it's the websites, their social medias, the Kickstarter pre-launch. Go hit that Kickstarter pre-launch, click the button to notify me of launch. That way, first thing in the morning, because you're doing at 8 a.m. launch or 12?
It will be more late morning. It will be, I'm aiming for 11:30 is when it launches.
Okay. Are you doing a full month or a 2 week?
Oh, it is a full month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Going all in, full month. I'm telling you, the last 2 weeks are going to be like gut wrenching.
Looking forward to my birthday's right in there. So
yeah, you're going to see a lot of action in the first 2 weeks, and then you're going to see it do this, and then toward the end it's going to like do that again.
Yeah.
Like every time I talk to people, they're like, "Dude, the last 2 weeks is like gut wrenching."
Yeah.
So, but Michael, appreciate you coming through. Jack as well. I know he had to drop off. But thank you both for joining us tonight on the US. Actually, before I do that, I want to kick it to you one more time so you can tell everybody where they can find you.
Well, first of all, you can find me on michaelbarronauthor.com. And if you enjoyed what I was talking about and the kind of stuff I'm putting out, definitely sign up for my newsletter. If you are a aspiring creator, it's just a once a month newsletter. I am not gonna fill up your inbox, I promise. But what I do is I do kind of I call them dialogue with my muse, where it's like funny little dialogues between me and the muses, like in my head. And I kind of get across like lessons in how to tell great stories like that. I find it more fun and funny and creative than just doing, here is an essay why you show don't tell kind of thing. And so it's like, they're like kind of fun little short stories. I also list a few different literary agents every month, a few literary agent and comic publisher that's like open for submissions as well. So if you're interested in that, definitely sign up.
Yeah.
I'm also on Blue Sky, and I'm Michael Barron Author on Instagram.
There you have it. And all that's down in the description below this. So make sure you click those links, go check them out, make a new friend, stop in, say hi, support the Kickstarter. And now with that, I'll roll into my outro. Michael, Jack, thank you both for joining us tonight on the USDN Podcast. Be sure to check out The Secret Lives of Demon Hunters on Kickstarter and follow both creators online to stay up to date with the campaign and future projects. If you enjoyed tonight's conversation, make sure to like, follow, and share, subscribe, and join the Council of Nerds for more conversations with the writers, artists, publishers, and creators shaping the future of independent comics. Ladies and gentlemen, the Council of Nerds is now adjourned. This has been the USDN Podcast, where indie comics come to life. Y'all be safe out there.
Take care.
It's a trap!